Welcome to Podcast for Fun. This is the show where we dive into the passion, the process, and the journeys of creative storytellers as they bring their stories to life. I'm your host, Sophia, and today we are joined by a talented comic creator, Marc Rene. Thank you so much for being here, Marc.
And thanks for having me.
So let's start with you telling us a little bit about yourself and your career.
I am initially was a self-taught artist who decided that wasn't enough, and so decided to do a little bit of schooling at the Noman School for Arts in Los Angeles, while interning over at Cartoon Network and then eventually Disney. And uh, Cartoons and television were a huge part of, my influence when I was growing up, including a lot of anime manga. And so I just wanted to be kind of like intertwined in that world. And eventually, as I was getting deeper into manga and then into American comics, I decided that I wanted to be the one sharing my stories. And my mentor at the time had told me, well, one of the best ways to do that is through comics. And so that's what led me to start creating comics a little over, I want to say 15 years ago. And it's been a passion ever since. It's something that I find incredible joy in doing. And yeah, giving voices to new conversations, narratives, things that people necessarily won't see in their everyday lives. It's a cool feeling to be able to reach people in a creative way.
What would you say was like one of your biggest inspirations?
Um, Inspirations in terms of creatively or just in general?
Creatively.
Yeah, creatively, I think one of my biggest inspirations, um, it had to be, and this is so cliche, but it had to be when I was a kid.
Mm.
I would wake up every Saturday morning waiting for Dragon Ball to come on television.
Wow.
And this was when it was first syndicated in the United States, so back in the 90s. And I just always thought to myself, like, wow, like I would love to create something that makes me feel like that show did. And fast forward to now, God rest his soul, Akira Toriyama, who who left this world, he still makes a lasting impact even to today. It's really cool to see the new generations who have no idea that that show was created back in the 80s, love it as if it was, created, in this decade. So that was very inspiring, and it wanted me to go out and create something that would have a lasting impact on not just my culture, but the global culture in general. I feel like that show alone has kicked down all the doors for Japan in terms of animation and manga and has made it highly not just acceptable but popular and like the lead in terms of like the standard of cartoons these days.
You know, it's so funny. That was one of my favorite shows growing up too, and I literally have a memory of trying to like create like a key ball in my hand when like the middle of class, like and trying like Kamehameha or whatever. But
Yeah, yeah, we have very similar experiences when it comes to that. It's like one of the funnier ways that we try to like I don't know like burn off energy when we were kids was
hmm.
trying to like go Super Saiyan and
Yes, yes,
um,
yes.
yeah, and even though my taste in terms of like shows that I watch have ventured elsewhere, I
Hmm.
still have a pretty fond heart for that IP, and every once in a while I'll go and pick up the back issues of it in the Shonen magazine and or in the collected volumes at one of the bookstores, and I'll just catch up on like where they're at currently. It's pretty wild that they are still continuing the storyline to this day.
But I have to be honest, I'm not like I really love Dragon Ball Z. That's my favorite. Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. I don't know which one I like more. I think I like Z a little more, maybe because I watched it in a weird order. I watched Z first, and then I watched Dragon Ball, and then I watched Super. And I was disappointed when I watched Super. I just felt like it was incomparable to the other two, which is like way better. I heard Akira Toriyama didn't even write Super, so.
Yeah, I'm not sure what his involvement was in Super, but I feel very similar in that way. In regards, like I did watch it in that order too, because I think Z came to the United States first before they aired Dragon Ball. I think Dragon Ball itself was a little too like it was too explicit natured in
Yeah,
its
yeah,
content, and so but Z was more action friendly oriented, and so. I saw that first, and then I was like, "Well, I want more." And then I saw Dragon Ball. I was like, "Whoa, wow! Like, this is way crazier than I thought it would." And then, Super is it's interesting because I think it's a Dragon Ball for the times.
yeah.
It's adapted to be globally accessed versus, I think early on, Akira was really trying to talk to a specific audience, and that really showed in Dragon Ball specifically. And as it got more commercial success, you see that the narrative is trying to reach more than what the original Dragon Ball did.
What do you mean by like specific audience? Like what kind of people?
Yeah, so I think that with Dragon Ball, like with the Japanese culture, the Japanese audience, there's very, very specific like cultural undertones and taboos that Dragon Ball touched on, and that's why it was so provocative during its original run, is because it
Mm.
did challenge a lot of those known those known hot points in Japan. And as it got more commercially, successful, I think that he had to um, expand his idea of like, okay, what can reach people, and taking on more universal themes of family, friends, that friendship conquers all type of thing.
Yeah.
That iconic moment where Krillin is um, killed by Frieza, and Goku is just set over the limit. It was a incredible moment for like what we would do in terms of tragedy for our friends and family and people we consider family, and that's something that resonates with the entire globe. It's just like one of those global messages that I remember, and themes of like um, adoption were heavily present, and I think this is why Dragon Ball became very popular in China too, because there's that notion of like Gohan being kind of adopted by Piccolo when his dad is
Yeah.
away, and it's kind of like it's like I feel like a lot of kids have that experience, including myself, in terms of like that adoption story. So there was themes that touched on non-specific Japan, like notions throughout the entire um, Dragon Ball Z series, which I thought that's what made it such a commercial hit. It was very in tune with uh, trying to appeal to a larger audience, and then I think Super kind of like puts that on like overdrive and goes beyond that, which for the core audience who are like there since day one, it
Mhm.
feels a little lacking because we're not hyper focused on something new. We're kind of revisiting similar and very tropes that we're familiar with, and and I think that's where it feels lacking. But I think that in terms of the magic's still there because it brought us back every single week to watch every episode still. So it's like one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's lacking, but it still made me feel special, like the way that the original series made me feel special.
Do you feel like aspects of Dragon Ball is prevalent in your current writing since it's inspired you so much?
Uh, I would say the themes of family and doing what's right are very much present in the work that I do today. Not much more. than that. Like the aesthetics, and the functions, like like the fighting, the power levels, types of things. I don't really care for too much in my own writing and my own comic creating, but I do heavily lean into like those deeper themes, those central themes of you know keeping family close, doing what's right for your neighbors, your the people here on Earth that you share it with. Like the biggest thing Goku was about, it's like it didn't matter where he came from. His home was his home, and he was willing to put himself on the line for that. And that resonates, with a lot of the characters that I work with, where it's like they may have been beaten down by society or kind of cast away in some way, but there is some goodness of that experience, even in very terrible tragedy. That little good, that little nugget of good is what kept them going and helps them aspire to be greater. And I think that's something that we all still continue to strive for, is like as this world gets more divided and politically uncertain, I think we all look for that little nugget of goodness that we can cling on to and, keep going every day.
Do you have an example of that like present in your stories?
Yeah, so like one of my books that you saw at the convention at Emerald City Comic Con Macau,
Yeah.
it's a story about a lot of dark things that are happening in the underground world in Macau, China, regarding um, sex trafficking, gambling, art dealing, um, and it's just very, very dark. And our main character Ying, who is the art curator for the newest and hottest casino sensation there, she looks at all of the people trying to have a voice and the protesters, and sees that there's still good in this society that only promotes like corruption and the gambling and stuff that's happening in that particular fictional world. And she takes that into her own hands, kind of like a female Bruce Wayne slash Batman, where she goes covert and like takes on the purpose of these people and tries to make the situation better from within.
Mhm.
And I think that's huge because one, like women in comics, like it's very rare that we see them in a power position and have their own agency. It's always usually like kind of like the through the filter of the male gaze, and like we try to escape that, and functionally we can't because we're men creating this comic, but like we
Yeah.
try to at least offer insight that that path forward is possible, even in this world of comics that is dominated by male characters. We try to show that this woman is still trying to attempt the same thing that something like Goku did. Try to make this place that she lives in better for everybody who is crying for help. And that's definitely an example from Macau. The other book that was there at my booth, Alexis Wiles, the same thing. This one also a female character with the writer who is also female, that I worked on, Jamie McAfee. Um, Alexis Wiles is in this post-apocalyptic world where it's machines and an evil spirit kind of are intertwined, and they're kind of like dictating the future of this particular world, and just making everything incredibly bad, toxic, and transforming people into machines and beasts. And she herself has been altered to in a way where her heart doesn't function normally like others. And so she's not only learning how to recapture her own love, but she's also learning to, trying to protect the love of the individuals that still exist in this world and still want to have a human experience. And so her journey is very much aligned with trying to help others other than herself, and sometimes at the expense of her own health. And yeah, it's a really cool journey. And she, it really centers around the human experience of help thy neighbor, because if we're all alone, there's what point is there to living if we're just alone on this earth? And so it's a really cool tale about, like, if everything went incredibly bad, like the worst case scenario, how do we lift ourselves up? So yeah.
How do you find your artists for your comics?
Well, for me, I typically draw most of my comics. But there are some where I'm working with other artists. And the one thing I look for is, like, do they have like a unique voice in their work? And I love DC, I love Marvel, and they're obviously getting better with more unique styles within their brands. But I've always gravitated toward Image Comics because it's like it always seems like everybody had their own style, their own flair. And
Mhm.
so when I look to collaborate with artists for my work, or other projects, I make sure that their work is distinctly different than mine, that they can bring something different, because, like, I'm already bringing something to the table. I want them to bring something that helps add to that conversation. I don't want more of the same. I want diverse. I want a representation of, like, who I am as an individual, which is diverse. And so that's the number one thing that I look for when it comes to other artists. And then the second thing that's it's always secondary is skill.
Yeah. So like what's an example of one of an artist you work with that had like a distinct, like what was distinct about them?
Yeah, so I worked with this artist a few years back named Olympia, and what was very distinct about her was that her lines, like, I would never be able to achieve the amount of cleanness in the way that she renders her lines.
Hmm.
It was so polished, where it's like I'm a little bit more rough on the edges, and the way that she rendered a couple of scenes for the comic that we were working on, the way the comic actually functioned was that it was a story about other stories within it. And so this character would dive into their basically fantasy world, and it would come to life. And so, like, every time they did this, we would try to portray a different style of art. And so when she came to the table and actually did the roughs and then finally the finished pages for it, it was so distinct from what I was doing on the main comic that it really brought to life that goal that we try to do, is make everything seem like its own world while it's still contained within this one narrative. And
Yeah.
that was really cool to see. And to be honest, like, I feel like she outshined me on my own work, which was awesome to see.
That's, I feel like for me, I feel like I have a bit of like a perfectionist trait, you know? So I have artists I work with, but I have such a, how to explain, a detailed vision of what I want. I really like what my artist sends, but I do end up like fixing a lot of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be some level of editing when it comes to, like, especially when you're sharing your own vision with
Hmm.
others. You do want it to be the same thing that came out of here. It's like it's one of
Yeah.
those things. But, like, as a working artist, like, when you're getting, like, deadlines from editors, say, like, if I'm on a book, I was on a book a couple years ago with this editor that I love, over at American Gothic Press, and sometimes, like, you have to go with what is expedient versus what's perfect. Like, if I were to linger on what was perfect for everything that I did, I would never finish a book. It just wouldn't happen, because I'm always seeing something flawed. I'm always looking at something that is, oh, this could be better, this could be different, revision, revision, revision. And after a while, it becomes it basically kills the project because you can't move on from that point. And so, my advice in terms of that is, like, sometimes, like, you, instead of looking at it as, like, is it a perfect representation of what I was thinking of? I would look at it, is it a perfect representation of how it made me feel? And if it can pass that test of, like, does it make me feel the way that the way I'm seeing it makes me feel, then I'm okay with moving on.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of curious. Would you ever want your comic to turn into a show or like a film?
Uh, yeah, I would be lying if I said I didn't. There's some things in the works right now for one of my books, so I really can't say no because it's leaning in that direction already. And
Mhm.
but is that the reason why I create these things? No, it always comes down to the core of why I wake up and draw, and or write, and that's I just want to share cool stories. And I feel like folks and kids who grow up with like very unique experiences, hard experiences, it's important. It's a form of therapy in a way, and
Mhm.
having it on a grand scale like television or the silver film, like the silver screen. It's like, it's basically just like allowing other people to connect with that experience and, go through some type of catharsis themselves.
Do you feel that your experience in Cartoon Network applies to your skills in comics today?
Oh, yeah. Um, Discipline, being able to take critical feedback without taking it personal, work ethic, being, understanding why you love what you do and why you're there. Yeah, absolutely. My mentors that came from that time, and even after, it just adds to that level of love that you have for the craft. And so if you love what you do but you're not really feeling encouraged by the people you're sharing it with, find other people to share it with, because those aren't the right ones. Yeah.
How did you like get that internship in Cartoon Network in the first place?
Oh, I lived in Los Angeles, and they always do, like at the local schools, they always have like these partnering programs. And I ended up signing up for one of the programs and getting accepted. And so it was like very much not anything that I did, but more of the function of the schools.
What was the program?
So I was in animation and like film over at a community college in Los Angeles. And they were like, hey, like, they're literally next door to the
Mhm.
studios, and so it's like they do internships. And I applied and I got accepted. And yeah, it was back when internships were unpaid, and so like you're literally doing it for the experience and the exposure. And luckily for me, it worked out.
If you knew you wanted to like make comics, why did you take animation?
Because back then I didn't know I wanted to make comics.
Oh.
Yeah, I just wanted to, share stories in a cool medium, whether it be cartoons or whatnot. It was one of my mentors who showed me that on the side they did comics. Like that was their passion. That's how they started. And they said, "Hey, you really want to share your stories and get them out there now? Make comics. It's visually appealing. It's widely accessible, and it's much easier to make than TV. TV takes years to make, like, sometimes up to, 10, 20 years before things get on air. And so he said, why would you want to wait that long? And I was like, yeah, you're right. Let me get something out there now. And I do not regret that.
Who was that mentor?
Steve Seagle over at Men of Action. Yeah.
So did you meet him like was he one of the teachers in your school or
Yeah, yeah, like it's a little complicated, but
yeah,
yeah,
of
it's
course.
it's something of that nature. Yeah,
So Mark, did you grow up in LA?
yeah, yeah. I split my time between there and the Bay.
Bay? Where's the
Yeah,
Bay?
the Bay Area, San Francisco area.
I see, I see. So I have an interesting question. If you were to be like one story, like a fictional story that you wish, not you wish, like something you'd want to make. Like I want to make something like that. Like what would it be?
Um, well, I can't tell you what I would actually do because I'm going to do it and I don't want anybody to take that idea. But I will tell you the themes around that idea.
Okay.
And the themes around that idea are acceptance and growth and learning to love yourself. So that's in that's what I'm cooking right now in terms of um, the next project that I'm going to be working on.
Mm,
Um, but to your point about like what idea would I be working on in general, specifically too, I would also say that the film Prometheus by Ridley Scott was something that I wanted to do too, as well as to show um, Raised by Wolves. I think he produced and directed that, and it was written by Aaron something, really recluse writer. But those are the type of stories that I've always wanted to create, and I've attempted and failed, but I'm determined to get it right. So that sci-fi type of extra worldly thing that's on my to-do list too.
wait, what do you mean by you attempted and failed? I want to hear more about that.
Oh, I published a comic that was it was a flop. It was not a flop. It just the publisher didn't want to continue with it for whatever reason. I don't know if it was budget or whatnot, but
Mm,
just consider that it's like it got canned and it's a failure. So it's like I accepted it as for what it was, and I was like, okay, I just got to do better. I might bring it back as something else, as a webcomic redesigned. But truth is, it failed, and it was visually pleasing, like some of the best work I've done visually. But it just wasn't. I don't think it was selling the way that they thought it would sell. So yeah, it got shelved. And so eventually, I want to be able to tell a successful sci-fi story.
yeah.
Because I do very much enjoy sci-fi, even considering going back to school to study quantum mechanics, just so I can understand a little bit more about how that works, so I can put it into my work.
Oh my God, the dedication. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun read. I just find that stuff fascinating.
Me too. That's why everything I write is always sci-fi. For some
Ah,
reason.
very cool.
Uh,
Very cool.
so I need to know like though, like the story. What was the story? Because I feel like even if you said it flopped, right? I feel that it's probably still a good story because everybody has different preferences. There's some famous movies that I watch and I'm like, why do people like this? But there's people who like it, right? So I'm kind of
Hmm.
curious what that flopped story of yours, what it was.
Well, let me get this straight. I'm speaking specifically from a numbers and editorial standpoint.
Yeah.
I think is an awesome story. It's
Yeah.
called Project Auroral, and
Hmm.
it centers around these two lovers who are caught in an experimental accident on the ISS, and it results with them having becoming powerful entities infused with an energy that we start to learn about as the story progresses. The only problem is one of the individuals landed on the side of humanity, and the other one landed on the side of expedience for the nature of the universe. And so they were at opposing forces where it's one viewed humans as a detriment to the progression of the universe, and the other was like humans deserve to live no matter what the universe says. And so they decided to well, they had no choice but to clash. And
Hmm.
yeah, it has themes of are you willing to sacrifice your own love for the greater good and put yourself on the line for people you don't know? Very Superman-esque type of
Yeah.
tropes there. And so yeah, and it's like one of those stories where it was really focused on the trying to parallel science with the human experience and trying to blend those lines a lot. And I thought it was made a pretty cool read. It gave you that superhero feel while
Mhm.
also giving you that like mystique of science fiction. And yeah, me and my co-writer, we may bring it back one day.
You should, because that's kind of funny that it turned from, you know how a lot of people are like, oh, enemies to lovers? Yours is kind of like lovers to enemies.
Yeah, yeah, and it's you would think that it would go back to what it was, but it doesn't. It's like when we tell stories too, we try to be very practical where it's like it's not the picture perfect outcome, but it's a outcome that you can be satisfied with. And I think that's what makes, our stories a little unique in that way where it's like you think it's going to be predictable, but it's not. And it's still within reason. Like logically, you could still reach that conclusion, but it's not the conclusion you are programmed to think. And so that's what we try to strive for is not the picture perfect ending, but an ending that you could be satisfied with.
Okay, you don't have to like spoil your story to tell me what kind of satisfied conclusion you have for your stories, but like, what's an example when you mean satisfying conclusion?
Yeah, so instead of like, this is not in the story, but it's like one of the possibilities that we considered for the story, where it's like the two lovers, they ended up on opposite sides of this war. And, many people think it's like, oh, they resolved the war. Maybe they can possibly get back together and we can have a
Yeah.
perfect ending. But yeah, in ours, we had considered like, what, the person that the person on the bad side of history was ended up dying, and the person who was their lover had to accept that they fought for what they thought was right
Yeah.
and carry that with them moving forward and find someone new to to be with. And so,
Mhm.
and I feel like that's more representative of the human experience where it's like, when we go through breakups, we often think like, oh yeah, we're going to get back with this person that we lost. And it's usually never the case. Or if it is the case, it goes terribly wrong and it's even worse. And so we try to make it more of in line with like what we'd actually expect with the reality where it's like, this thing had to be done and we're just going to learn to grow from it.
Did that come from like a personal experience of yours?
Oh yeah, yeah. Everything that we write comes from personal experiences and or personal experiences that have been shared with us in confidence, and we tweak, to make it work because it's a compelling story. Yeah.
Do you have any other examples of that you could share? Like, oh, I had this experience and this is how it showed up in my story.
Yeah. So actually, and this is not a spoiler, but a book that I have coming out this summer,
Mhm.
Slugger. The experience of like our main character, he's adopted, and that's coming from like a specific experience that I had as an individual, and the way that like we portray it in the book is a very like parallel experience of like how I did it, which was like I immersed myself in sports growing up, and like all of my validation as a human was through my success at sports, at
Mhm.
an activity. And then you hit the fan and it's like, well, what happens when you no longer have that success? How do you gauge yourself? Do you fall into despair or do you rise above the situation? And
Mhm.
that is the question, that is the situation that our main character has to choose um, in Slugger. And so yeah, that's just another example of like where I use my own personal experience to like kind of guide the character's journey.
What sports did you play?
Uh, Started out with football, track, and then basketball was like the big one that
Mhm.
I got very close to doing something with, and then it did not happen.
Why?
I wasn't good enough.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people tell me that. That's what kind of sucks with sports, right? A lot of it, I mean, obviously a lot of it is hard work, but sometimes, well, okay, I'm not sure, you should tell me. Because my friends told me, and I had a lot of friends who were into sports, even though I was not into sports at all. I was the weird art kid. I don't know how I was friends with people who were like in football and like, hockey and everything. But they were saying that they just weren't like, f like physically capable enough to be an athlete.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. Like skills wise, like, I'm almost 40 now. I'm 2 years away from 40, and I still keep up with 20-year-olds at my local gym, or like a pro am experience over at, one of the gyms that I play at. And not because I'm like physically gifted, it's because like I worked really hard on my skill. And so my skill carries me. But then what happens when you have somebody who is physically gifted and then has skill as
Yeah.
well? Like that's what the separation is. And I think that's what they're speaking to. And you can see that in comics too, where it's like you have these people with a God-given skill to draw or to write.
Hmm.
And like no matter how much you work on your craft, like no matter how many hours you draw, no matter how many hours you type, you can never capture that experience that they offer to people. And so I think like athletes in that way are very similar to artists, where it's like there are certain individuals that are just born with an innate ability to do that specific activity greater than everybody else. It doesn't mean that nobody else can do it. It
Yeah.
just means that they are just born to do that, and that's okay. And so yeah, so when I understood that and accepted that as an athlete, oops, sorry about that.
No
uh,
worries.
when I when I understood that and accepted that as an athlete, like I think that helped me become a better artist too, because I realized that like I'm not going to be the greatest at what I do, but I'm going to strive for it, and we'll see where I land. And the cool thing about art is you you never hit like a ceiling. There's always another plateau to reach. And that's what's great about art, is that you don't ever have to stop. You can continue going even into, you know, I saw artists like, one of my inspirations, Neil Adams, and
Mhm.
who mentored me for a little while before he passed away. He was drawing up into his death. He was drawing up into his death, and he was drawing at an elite level still. Like he was utterly fantastic. And that, to this day, like that image of him, like it inspires me to continue on, because it's that one thing that you can do and reach others, and it doesn't matter what age you are, like somebody will resonate with it.
Hmm. How about for writing? How did you go to school for writing?
No, I did a lot of some online training, and a friend of mine who went to the Iowa Writers Workshop
Mhm.
tutored me and mentored me in a lot of writing. And then the Iowa Writers Workshop is a huge workshop for some of the top novelists in the world, including
Wow.
Brandon Sanderson and Stephen Erickson, and a bunch of other individuals that I look up to and hold dear to my heart. Uh, I believe Melissa McPhail too, who's one of my favorite writers. God rest her soul. She passed away a few years ago from brain cancer. I believe she attended there too. I might be wrong, so I'll have to double check that. But incredible, incredible friend of mine who attended, tutored me and helped me understand like structure and organizing my thoughts, and keeping the central theme at the core of everything that I write, so that everything is cohesive, so that page 344 is still relevant to page one.
Yeah.
So it's like one of those things where it's if you can do it without formal training, you should, to save a little bit of money. But if you need a little bit more guidance and structure, you should definitely spend that money to get formal education, especially if you're passionate about it.
Yeah. So why do you think you needed a bit more like guidance, I guess? Because you kind of got taught, right?
Yeah, I think that with anything, especially skill wise, it's like just because you learned it doesn't mean that's the end of the learning.
Hmm.
And so, like, I'm always like, even like, the YouTubers today, like there's certain YouTubers, there's information everywhere, right?
No.
And like I just try to find YouTubers that like speak to my learning language, And once I find that, I love learning from them. Like, there's a bunch of kids on YouTube that are art, and they're just like savants, the geniuses. I'm like,
No, no.
let me go and watch and learn from them. And it's like, and they're like half my age, I'm
Yeah.
like, it's like, wow, like it's incredible how much you learned in just your 18, 19, 20 years on this planet. Like, and like, I'm one of those people, it's like, I never look at age as a factor of like who is wise, because
Hmm.
I feel like there's people like, Greta Thunberg, the girl overseas who is a climate activist. She's super, super young. She was a teenager and she was leading the global movement for climate change. Like, there's never an age limit or limitation when it comes to artistry. And even like my daughter, like, I feel like I was looking at some of her art and I'm like, wow, you draw so much better than I did at that age. And for some of the characters you're doing, like especially like cute little cutesy characters, you draw better than me. Like, I can't draw them that cute. I don't know why I can't, like, but you just innately just draw things cute. Like, and so it's like even at her age, she's 11, like I still learn stuff from her. I'm like, oh, maybe if I soften this curve here, like she did, where did she learn that from? Like, it's crazy. Like, if you kind of like remove yourself from the process and just like look at the process, you learn so much more.
Maybe
Instead
she
of like
got
thinking
that
it's like
scene for you.
maybe, but it's like one of those things where it's like, every opportunity where you see art is a opportunity to learn. And so like even this painting behind me, like I got it because like when I saw it in the store, I was like, wow, that's a great harmony right there, a great use of color. Like, I love that so much. It was like, I want to buy it. And so it's like I always look at, anything that is artistically like intentional as an opportunity to learn.
Do you feel like you're ever more lean towards like a certain type of art or a certain type of story?
Mm, no, I have to say that I typically give most things a fair shake if it's like, put in front of me. In
Mhm.
terms of like stories I seek out, like, yeah, there are certain things like, when I turn on the TV and I'm sitting down and I actually have a moment to myself to watch something, like I'm very intentional. It's like, okay, let me see if there's something good that's sci-fi first.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I always look for that first. And then I look for like maybe like fantasy. And if it's not there, then I'm like, all right, let's look at some mystery. Oh, if that's
Uh-huh.
not there, then drama. If that's not there, then like there's always something funny on. So find some comedy. So I kind of like go down that hierarchy. I typically like to be challenged psychologically, with what I watch or consume, because I've been in this genre and industry for so long that like you kind of can like when you're watching TV, you kind of like can like pick apart and predict what's happening,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
there's
yeah,
like
yeah.
there's certain tropes, there's certain formulas that Hollywood follows with it, and so it
Hmm.
becomes like I'll be watching something and I'll be like, and then I find myself on my phone on Reddit, and I'm like, oh, why am I even wasting my time watching this? Because it's like,
Yeah, yeah.
I understand it, and so it's like I try to find stuff that is kind of like out of the box, and so like I always give shows like one or two episodes in before I say no, it's not for me. So, but yeah, if I have to look for something, it's typically like sci-fi first. Yeah.
Sometimes it's so bad because I watch like shows, right? You know that one scene, do you ever watch Invincible before?
Oh yeah, yeah. I have some friends that worked on it.
Oh, really? Wow. So you know that one scene where Mark is saying, okay, this is not really a spoiler, but it's a scene where he's talking to like someone at a comic convention and they're talking about how they save money
Oh
for
yeah,
the animation. And I thought it was so funny because ever since I started like writing comics and animating things myself, I can't help but like watch a show and go like, oh, they saved a couple bucks on that scene. Or like,
yeah,
oh, they did that
yeah.
because they didn't have the voice actor that day. Like I can tell.
Yeah, it's funny, like Invincible, especially that particular scene. It made fun of even the process of making that show itself, because it went through a lot of struggles, and it was poking at itself, but it spoke to a lot of what happens in the industry, where it's like corners are cut in order to make deadlines or make it, budgets work. And so yeah, yeah, that's definitely one example of like where that definitely happens. And yeah, it's when you can pick up on it, it's hard to not see it in everything else.
Do you feel like when you're writing, you feel watching shows, you look at it more of in a constructive perspective rather than just enjoying the show?
Um, no, I think that if I'm actually enjoying a show, I enjoy the show and I can still break it down and be constructive about it. But the overall, because everything's being done well, I still
Mm.
enjoy it. Like, for instance, like my wife and I were watching Dark Matter, and
Oh,
this is an Apple TV show. And we were, I was very much on the, they talk about like, Schrodinger's, um,
cat.
uh, yeah, Schrodinger's cat, where it's like it exists in two places at once, and it's only decides to be dead or alive based on how you observe when you observe it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this show is going to be very predictable in terms of like the outcome, and then it wasn't. And part of that was me like really seeing the choices they made,
Hmm.
because and this goes to like a other thing that's weird about me is I I love spoilers. Like I don't care if you spoil anything for me, like because it's not about the end result. Like I don't care how things end up,
Hmm.
but I do want to see the choices made to how you got there. Like I want to
Okay.
see the thought process. I think that's way more important than like Superman saves the world. Like if I walk into a Superman movie, I know he's gonna win at the end. I
Yeah.
know. Like I know he's gonna win. The movie's already spoiled for me.
Hmm.
But what were the choices he made to get there?
Hmm.
That's what's very very important for me. And so I was like I that's some reason like my brother really hates spoilers, and I'm like, dude, like spoilers they shouldn't matter to you because it's the choices that are made to get to that point. Like I can know the end result of my favorite basketball game, right? Like
Hmm.
I love the Warriors, and like I saw the box score last night, and I saw the Steph Curry score 56 point or 52 points,
Oh.
and I was like, that's very cool. And I was like, I'm okay with knowing that. And then I went back and watched, the game while I was working,
Hmm.
and because I wanted to know how did he do it.
Hmm.
Oh, he did this move. Oh, he went to this spot. Like that's what's fascinating to me is those individual little choices that we make it to the outcome. Because, like, to be honest with you, in life, there's only one real outcome. Like, we live and we die.
Yeah.
There's one outcome to life. You die. How boring is that, right? Everybody dies, right? And so that's the spoiler alert. Spoiler alert, we all die. But the interesting thing is, what are the choices we made throughout that life? That is the most fascinating thing to me. And so if I can make great choices in the way that I create art in the page to page to get to that endpoint, I can have people come away saying like, yeah, I've heard a story similar to this before, and I've heard that outcome before, but I've never seen the way that the character got to that point before.
Hmm.
That was unique. That was cool. And that's what makes things memorable.
You know what? I agree with you because I think I was speaking to someone else the other day, and we're talking about how almost all stories are technically made, like technically, like this happens, this happens, this happens. But let's say if you replace the main character with someone who has a completely different personality, but the outcome of the story's same, he might make different decisions, he might say different things, he's definitely not gonna act the same, so it's gonna still be a
Mm-hmm.
completely different story, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There may be like story, like let's take something very simple.
Mm.
Superman saves the planet without killing any villain, without killing anybody. Substitute Superman for Batman. Batman, um, goes in. He really harms a lot of people. Doesn't still kill,
Yeah.
but he saves the world at the end of the day. Then let's take something like an anti-hero like we can even take a pseudo villain like Lex Luthor who does want to save the planet. He just wants to do it on his terms.
Mm.
He's willing to kill people in order to save the planet. Like people can die, and
Yeah.
he lets people die, but then he saves the planet. You know,
Mm.
same thing with like Thanos, right? Thanos, hey, I want to save the universe. Like the human race, the conscious races are killing the universe. Half of you guys are gone. I'm gonna go and sleep.
Mhm.
Universe is safe. I was okay with that. But like, what was really interesting about that situation was the ego of the human says, we can't let anyone die. We're willing to let the universe die, but we will try to be better
Mhm.
and curve that. And so that's what made that storyline so unique because it's like Thanos wasn't wrong, but the way he went about it was so atrocious that we couldn't stomach it as a human. And so
Mhm.
like that taught us our limitations as humans where it's like we can't see the universe in pure numbers. We do see it through a human and empathetic light. And so like that's and I think that the Avengers Endgame and I think that was like peak cinema in terms of showing you that the choices we make are the most important detail of the story journey.
How do you feel about the latest Marvel movies?
The ones I haven't watched.
Me neither. I
uh,
haven't watched them either.
Yeah, I think what was the last Marvel movie that I saw? I think I saw Miss the
Mhm.
Marvels with the three
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Marvel's characters, and I thought that was fun. I don't know what I don't know why it happened. I
Mhm.
just thought it was fun. I thought that the relationship between the three girls, three different generations too,
Mhm.
was so interesting as like a dysfunctional family that it kept me watching. And I honestly couldn't tell you what the reason they were fighting for was. I just can tell you that at the end of the movie, it made me feel good.
But do you feel like it's compatible with like the old Marvel movies?
I think that's going to be subjective to people. People can debate like, oh, this was greater, this was not great. I think it comes down to what is the one story that is your ultimate story that resonates with you,
Yeah.
and if that if that need in you for that story has been met, there's nothing that's ever going to beat it. However, in the future, there might be something made that resonates with the kids of the future or the adults of the future. And the stuff of the past doesn't resonate because it's not the environment and the situations they grew up in.
Hmm.
And so they're going to view that new thing as peak cinema.
Yeah.
And this also comes back, to our conversation about athletics, right? Where
Yeah.
the old generation of basketball players thinks that nobody's better than Michael Jordan. The new generation thinks nobody's better than LeBron James.
Yeah.
They're both right because the old generation grew up with this experience and the new generation grew up with this experience.
Hmm.
And the story of Michael Jordan doesn't satisfy the need of the new kids, but LeBron James does, and vice versa. And so I think it all comes down to what are your needs in terms of story?
Hmm.
What do you need to have satisfied in order for you to think something is compelling? And that's where you choose what's your greatest film of all time. Like my favorite film of all time in terms of compelling is a more recent one, Interstellar. I think that that was a masterpiece, like in terms of just storytelling, emotion, and just the concept of family through generations.
Hmm.
I thought I've watched that film well over 20 times, well over 20 times.
Dang.
And I watched Inception probably like, I watched Inception like 15 times in theaters. Like I spent so much money. Like I basically funded that entire film myself because I thought it
Oh
was
my.
fascinating. And I never thought that would be something that like intrigued me in a theater more than that. And then Interstellar came along and I was like, oh, that blew that out the water. Like that is the experience that I wanted to, and not just like the movie itself, but the music. Like to this day, I still listen to the soundtrack every single time I sit down to work. It's the one track, soundtrack that I listen to start out my work night every single day, ever since that film came out back in, I think, like 2014.
You know what? That soundtrack is in like 90% of inspirational videos. So every time I listen to it, I feel inspired. I'm like, ah, I need to lock in right now, after I listen to it.
Yeah, yeah, and so the reason I listen to it is because it elevates me to a frequency where it's like I want to be inspirational, and then I just continue, drawing, throughout that process.
I was gonna ask though, how do you keep yourself motivated? Because you kind of have to be self-motivated for your own stories, right?
Yeah, I say that have a purpose, like have something, have a reason why you do it, to begin with. Like my purpose is changing. Like I just had a son, a couple months ago,
Mhm.
and now I'm looking at it's like, ooh, eventually I want to create something for him. And so like I want to get through all the work that I'm doing now so I can start thinking about that. So it's
Yeah.
like I have to get through the work I have now. So that's pushed me to like completion.
Hmm.
So it's like, and everybody's is going to be different. And so like, but eventually it's like, I want to make a comic that like features my kids and they're able to see themselves in the work that their dad did.
Oh my God, that's so cute. That's so, like, how do I call it? It's very respectable and very innocent. I want to do that, but I'm still too young to have kids, so maybe like 10 years in the future, we'll see,
I,
you know.
I hear that. I hear that.
I'm
In
kind of
your own
curious.
time.
Yes, on my own time. Maybe like after I make comics and then I can like show it to my kids, you know. They'll be like 0 years old and be like, "What the hell are you showing me, Mom?" But anyways,
Hmm.
I'm curious. You said that the show The Dark Matter, was it?
Hmm.
You said it was unexpected. How was it unexpected?
So I think I can't really explain in a like linear way that people watching or listening to this can really understand, but conceptually, I can explain it as this: like when I look at film or television, I'm expecting a certain formula a couple minutes in after I see a few scenes being shot. I have a pretty good idea of like where they're going to go in terms of like how to get from point A to point B.
Hmm.
And it seems to me that in this show, the writers were like, we're going to give them a little bit of this predictability, but then we're going to purposely choose the opposite outcome in order to throw a wrench, not in just the story, but like in our ability to write to get to the ending that we have. And so it just seems like they were purposely throwing wrenches into their own writing process in order to get to the conclusion that they wanted, which made it very interesting in terms of the outcome. Like people died that I did not expect to die. Like I was like, there's no way that they died. Wow, they really just killed that person. I'm thinking, oh, they're gonna come back, like because there's it's this multi-world
Plot
theory, like oh
armor.
they're gonna bring them back. Nope, no plot armor, they're gone. And so it's like, and then the ending, and I'm not gonna spoil it, but it's like one of those things where it's like you're only expecting like two or three changes to the world, and then they just go on this spree of like so many changes where you're just like, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Like, oh my goodness, how are they going to finish this?
Mhm.
And then they wrap it up in a nice little bow. And you're just like, huh, that was very, very genius. Like, it was like one of those shows where it's like, it really challenged me to the very last episode.
What was the show about? Like, what's the not the synopsis, like the little like hook, I guess.
Um, what happens when you're able to choose the version of yourself you want to be? And what is the consequences of those choices of your two selves coming into contact with one another?
Oh my God, that sounds so cool. Maybe I should
Yeah,
watch it.
so yeah, imagine being able to choose the version of yourself that you want to be, but your old version still exists and then comes in contact with that new version. Yeah,
Oh my God. So it's called the
yeah.
Dark Matter, right?
Dark Matter on Apple TV. Yeah, it's pretty
Wait,
cool.
wait, wait. Can I write this down for like 2 seconds? I'll
Yeah,
be
go ahead.
the Dark Matter. Apple TV, right?
Hmm.
On Apple TV. Okay. I'm definitely watching that.
Yeah, I've recommended it highly to many folks that ask for recommendations.
Why do you think you're so into sci-fi?
I think it because space scares me. I get very fascinated and obsessed with things that I don't understand and terrify me. I find it comforting. The more I learn and the more I can fantasize about conquering it, it makes me feel better. Like, do I ever want to go to space? Hell no. Like, I never want to go on a rocket. I never want to be on the moon. I have no intention, but do I want to study it? Do I want to know how it works? Absolutely.
Hmm.
It's the same way. It's like if I didn't have to get on a plane, I wouldn't because I'm terrified of heights. I'm terrified of flight,
Hmm.
but I have to get on it because it is. And so every time I do, I'm like always shaking, palms are sweaty, and I'm always reading about how planes work, how how flight works, what they do with flight data. I'm always reading about it because it helps me understand and kind of make it less scary every time. And so
Hmm.
it's like one of those things where it's like the universe is so vast and we're floating in it. We don't even know how we really got here. Does the Big Bang actually tell us that, how we existed? Like, come on, like our science is so limited. Like, how do
Hmm.
we even know that the calculations that we're doing like explain? Like, there's always new discoveries. Like yesterday, they discovered that is they were able to see into the unseen universe. Like before the first few million years of after the Big Bang, you can't see it because of the radioactive interference. It's like clouded. And just a couple of days ago, they were able to see into a star system that was it's supposed to be only 300 million years old. And all scientists thought that was impossible until a couple of days ago. So what else is impossible that we actually can do? We just haven't discovered it yet. That's terrifying. Like, what if they look into there and there's like some master race entity in there, like, and they're just like, oh, you saw us, now we have to delete you. Like, that'd be crazy, right? Because we can't be the only sentient life forms out there. Like, if,
Yeah.
or is the universe so random that we are, and that we're literally looking into an empty bowl and that's all that's out there? Is like we are literally alone in the universe. That's terrifying too. And so I
Hmm.
want to know more. I want to know what, why, how, when, where,
Hmm.
who. I just think it's like you can't stop asking questions. It's almost impossible because it's infinite out there.
Hmm.
You
So
know,
basically, the things that scare you also like intrigue you, right?
absolutely, yeah.
And
And
that's
I
how
think
you.
that's for anybody. Like when you're scared of something, you can't stop thinking about it.
I don't even know what I'm scared of. So that I think I need to research more. I think I'm more into sci-fi because I feel like I like how re it kind of feels real, you know? It's grounded in reality and there's a little bit of like a sprinkle of like this ain't real, you know? Like
Mm-hmm.
for example, Matrix,
Yet, I
okay?
always say yet.
Yet,
This isn't real yet.
do you feel like we're living the Matrix?
That's a good question. Sometimes, like sometimes I think that the universe is messing with me. Like
Yeah.
one thing will go bad and then like a series of other things will go bad just to pile on. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
how? Like, whose luck is this? Like, for instance, like my iPad died when I was in Seattle and
Mm,
I had to get it replaced while I was there in order to work. And then
mm.
literally my watch died right after that. Like I'm like, is this coincidental? Like, or is it programmed in the programming of the devices itself, which is kind of like Matrix, right? It's programmed
Mm.
into like how they're, supposed to experience the world. And, we're so, tied to these objects that like when something happens to them, we feel like our programming is off, right?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, in a sense, I do think that we are, in a matrix of a sense, not necessarily how the movie plays out, but in
Yeah.
terms of like how we're programmed to interact with the world and each other, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. And also I feel like everyone is trying to make me think a certain way, if that makes sense. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole reason for marketing. Marketing is a psychological, psychological, endeavor. So if you go to any great marketing agency, you can see that the top managers, they went to psychology classes. They have a PhD in psychology. It's pretty
Mhm.
crazy. They understand how humans think and the way they react and how they will act if they're presented with certain things. And
Mhm.
that's all they do all day long is try to predict how you will react to something or make you act in a predictable way.
Mhm. So, like I saw a video that really scared me. There's a video of like, oh, this is how you make Cheetos healthy. And then they're saying, oh, technically it's vegan, so you can say it's vegan. Technically, you can say that there's like it's like low calorie if you just lower the serving price what is it, the serving size, and then
Hmm.
you make it all colorful and you add plants on it so it looks healthy, and boom, now you think it looks healthy, and I'm like, oh my God, now I think Cheetos looks healthy, so
Yeah, I forget what the term it is in PR, but it's if you take enough truths, it makes it appear that the conglomeration of that information is all true. So
mhm,
the claim becomes true if you think that the elements that make up the claim are true.
mhm. It's like this, when two people have an argument, depending on who you hear it, you're gonna be on that person's side of the argument because they think
Yeah,
they're right,
or who
right?
hears it first, right? Yeah, so
Exactly.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
really hard to decide what we think. I'm just trying to be as open as I possibly can. That's my solution. I don't know if it's gonna work. I don't know if it's working, but that's how I live at least. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good way. Like, the way that I proceed is like I always ask the basic questions that they taught us in elementary school: who, what, why, when, where. So if somebody's telling me a story and it's like something that's supposed to make me do something, I need to go and ask those questions so that if I'm going to act on it,
mhm,
I'm well informed of what I'm acting on.
that's smart. That's very smart. I might use that. Next time someone says like, "Oh my God, my boyfriend sucks," I'm like, "Who, what, why, where, when happened?"
Well, that's an opinion. Like, that's an opinion. Like, my boyfriend sucks is like, that's an opinion, definitely. But if they come to you and claim this, like, oh, yeah, my boyfriend is an abusive guy, like,
Yeah,
then you're like, oh, who, what, when, where, and you see evidence of like a black eye and you confirm it's him, then that's like, oh, yeah, he is, that he's a
yeah,
bad person. It's like one of those things where it's like, I think it just comes down to the basic, skill of critical thinking. Like, I think that the world is moving away from critical thought. They're letting the algorithms think for them, and
yeah.
that comes back to your matrix point. And I feel like sadly the art world is going in that direction too, with all this AI generation and stuff like that. And so, um, I think that if we can restore critical thinking to the masses, I think that these things of generation for I call it generating to satiate will go away.
I saw something so scary. I saw I feel like this is kind of disrespectful to Hayao Miyazaki, but I saw like a bunch of like Ghibli AIs
Oh
drawn,
yeah, yeah, I see it
and
too,
they're
and I completely
scary
agree.
good. They were scary good. I was shocked.
Yeah, it's I was watching his interview about AI and he said that you never catch him using it. It has no soul. And I believe it. Like, the I see all these people turning their pictures into Ghibli and I'm like, why? Like, oh, because it's cute. I'm like, the original photo was cute. Like, it just tells me that there's some sickness telling people that they're not good enough or
Hmm.
what they have is not good enough. And I think that if people were satisfied with who they were and what they have, there wouldn't be anything like that.
Hmm. So, Mark, I have a question. What's one advice you give to the people, like the aspiring storytellers watching this right now?
I would say don't stop sharing your stories. Tell it to anyone who would be willing to listen and always ask for feedback, whether it's good or bad. There's always something to learn. Even if somebody calls your stuff shit and say, oh, yeah, why do you think it's that way? Like, really let them understand it. If and if they can't give you a reason why they think it's shit, then it's not something that you should validate within yourself. Um, I think that storytelling is a very personal journey. And no matter if you're telling a story that's like super fantasy, like there's always a part of you that you're investing in that tale. And so treat it with the respect you would give to yourself and give it the time you would want someone else to give to yourself. And I think that you will eventually rise to the level that you want to accomplish as a storyteller.
Wow, that was phrased so beautifully. You're so
Thank
good
you.
at like saying like quotable things. I want to like quote it, you know?
I'm glad I can help you out.
So, Mark, where can our people watching this find your work?
um, I'm trying to be better about it, but the best place to find me is on the socials. Instagram is probably the place where I update the most often, and that's at Marc Rene Art. Just MarcReneart. That's on Instagram. And then if you want to see just like some previous works of mine, you can go to marcreneonline.com. There you can find some of my old comic work, and I promise I will update that this year too. But the stuff that's on there is pretty good too. So yeah,
And you probably like, find it in the description. I probably put it in if I didn't forget. Click, 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 guys.
yeah.
Well,
Please, check me out. Say drop in, say hello, and I might see you at one of these conventions in the future.
mm-hmm. Well, that's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining us and sharing your amazing insights. I had so much fun talking and yapping blah, 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 about movies. That was so fun.
Yeah,
And
I thoroughly enjoyed it as well. It's always nice to talk with another creative and get an insight to what they like, and kind of like reconsider like why I like certain things too. So it's like there's certain things that you said that I was, oh, I'm gonna take that into consideration when I watch something next. So that was cool.
hmm that's why I have this podcast, honestly. I love talking to people.
It's awesome. We'll keep going.
Thank you. And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to smash that like button, smash the subscribe button, and share it with fellow storytelling enthusiasts. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like me to explore, you can drop them in the comments or connect with me on any of my social medias at Podcast for Fun. Until next time, keep creating, keep dreaming, and we'll see you on the next episode of Podcast for Fun.